This might be the fastest AFL trade player review we do of the 2025 free agency and trade period. Malcolm Rosas Jr. has departed the Gold Coast Suns and he is now a Sydney Swan. What does it mean for the team he's left, the team he's landed at, and for those of us that play AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach? Have we got some relevance here to deal with in 2026? Going to unpack that on today's razor sharp episode. Really smart, crafty, got some damaging traits as a small forward in and out of the Gold Coast side. Just really couldn't crack into the side. And it comes as no surprise that another AFL team comes knocking on the door. We all want, the teams we support, we all want and need more presence inside forward 50, especially when the ball hits the deck. We want a couple of options that can create and set up scoring involvements and ultimately convert them into scoreboard impacts. And that's what I think, not only clearly of what Sydney targeted, but what's been the relevance and the value here for a Malcolm Rosas Jr. Because he's shown glimmers of that at the AFL level. That's probably the correct way to say it. It's not been unhelpful at the AFL level, but probably not quite hit the peak of his power. But sometimes it's hard to do that when you're flipped in and out of the team. You're vested, you're not vested. Come up against a tough team, the ball doesn't hit your forward 50 entries as cleanly and as consistently as maybe you'd hoped. And from a fantasy perspective, he's basically scored like a rookie, certainly this year in his 4 games. An average of 26.8 in fantasy, an average of 33.5 in SuperCoach. Yeah, there's some beloved vests that impact that for sure. But really, just never really shown much fantasy chops. What does it mean for the club that he's left? Well, politely, for the Suns, nothing. He was depth this year. Their team is only getting stronger, at least the forward 50 quality, with players like a Christian Petrarca heading there on a trade request. Not landed at time of recording, but I can't see with the draft capital that they have how that's not going to happen, especially now with, a Sam Flanders trade going through all that kind of stuff. It's no impact. Like, they've delisted Berry as well, who was the other kind of small pressure forward that they had. So they're allowing 2 of these small forwards to depart their system, one delisted, one through trade. So clearly the coaching and list management team are not worried about being able to replicate some forward small craft at all. Like, they've got players like Lombard and Rogers who probably are more inclined to be on the smaller side of midfielders anyway, but they're developing that craft. Bailey Humphrey, who's fighting his way to get into this midfield unit desperately, is still playing some smaller forward trait roles, let alone what they've already got there. Ben Long, these kind of things. I know not all of these guys are your traditional crumbing small forward, but they play a function and a role that sits in the ecosystem. There's just nothing that the Suns are going to miss. It's why they delisted one small forward and they're happy that allowed Rosas to go for pretty much nothing on the trade table. What does this mean for Sydney? Well, I think it adds another dimension for them if he plays. We noticed a number of things this year about Sydney when they got really pillaged for injury in a number of different areas. They really lacked some depth in a couple of key areas of their list build. They have players that are either not quite up to AFL standard or not yet ready to become AFL consistent players. And so while I'm not sold that Malcolm's going to roll into the best 23 of Sydney, I think he adds at least a little bit of a new look of speed and some new dynamic to this forward line, which could honestly undergo a pretty big revolution if Charlie Curnow gets there. And certainly that's not done at the time of this video dropping, but it could land out. That would really shape things up. But I think he's coming into this team to add a little bit of depth so that if a Papley type misses a chunk of games like he did in 2025, okay, we've now got someone that can create and we feel that's got AFL level qualities about them that can at least protect our team as we continue to build our list in certain other areas. So I think he's coming to the Swans as a depth player, not as a best 23. There's a world they could structure it up, sure, but I do see the way this team is kind of built at this stage that they would need to change a bunch of stuff under Dean Cox. And so because he's not best 23 and because most small forwards at the best of time struggle for scoring consistency, let alone what Malcolm's been able to deliver over his very limited opportunity at a AFL level, I just don't see any fantasy relevance at all to this one at all. Not only for what it means for the club he's left at in terms of creating an opportunity or moving or freeing up something else at the club he's landed. I just don't think it's one of those rare moves that across he as an individual and where he's landed and where he's left, I don't think it has any fantasy implications at all. But am I wrong about that? If you're watching this as a video, make sure you comment below and let me know. Do you think I'm way off the mark here with my comments on Malcolm? Not about the quality of footballer he is, not at all, but in terms of his fantasy impact, that as a variable that cascades along the way, does he have any impacts that could potentially come from us? Are you seeing something that I don't see? I'd love to know about it. Why don't you comment below and let me know. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast and you haven't given us a follow or a 5-star rating, make sure you do that as well. Every single player that does, that's the proper language we're looking for. Every player that does move clubs this trade and free agency period, we will be reviewing them and giving you a fantasy take as well as a more traditional AFL trade review. So if you want more of it on this channel, you can go back and check it out. There's already a bunch of them that are dropped and there will be more to come as players move clubs every single day of this AFL trade and free agency period.